Good afternoon. Thanks everybody for coming. This is a very important topic that I'd like to speak on. We've got some people here that I'd like to introduce to you first. Chris Landry handles our juveniles here in Lafayette Parish. Amy Hebert handles the juvenile division in Vermilion Parish. We have Ms. Roya Bustani, one of our prosecutors. Joe Prejean, who in my mind is the best public speaker in the state of Louisiana. He's a great motivational speaker. Fritz Welter, who helped put this together. Stephen Salopek, our technical guy here. He does the IT work. Whenever he has any questions, he always asks me about it. I try to help him as much as I can. That's a joke, folks. So, good afternoon. Juveniles in the 15th Judicial District, Lafayette, Acadia, and Vermilion parishes will no longer be able to commit violent crimes and be able to stay in the juvenile system. If juveniles want to use guns and commit violent crimes in the 15th Judicial District like adults, then they will be prosecuted as adults. This is our goal for 2022. We want to reduce violent crime in the 15th Judicial District, and this initiative hopefully will accomplish just that. Just to give you some stats. Stats are sometimes a little boring, but I want to give you some stats because it's very important. Violent Juvenile Crime Initiative. Here are the stats. First and second degree murders, Lafayette. 17-year-olds, we have 4. 16-year-olds, 4. 15-year-olds, 1. 14-year-olds, none. If you look at the screen, we see these pictures every day in our investigations. The juveniles in our community apparently believe that it is acceptable for them to make guns and violent crime an everyday occurrence. The people in the 15th Judicial District, Lafayette, Acadia, and Vermilion parishes want to be able to go to work, then go home to their neighborhoods and raise their children and live in peace. They should be able to do that. The prosecutors in the Office of the District Attorney in the 15th Judicial District are going to give them safety and security by aggressively prosecuting violent juvenile crimes, just as if the juveniles were adults. The photo to the right is unfortunately typical of what prosecutors see in the 15th Judicial District. It is seen across the parish. It's seen across the state, actually. There are no geographic boundaries to the present violent juvenile crime wave. It is a socio-economic issue where juveniles see no way out of poverty other than a life of crime. Some more stats for you. Here in the 15th Judicial District, since July 1st of 2020, and we're only talking about juvenile cases here, folks, attempted first and second degree murders. Lafayette, 26. Acadia, 19. Vermilion, 3. Here's some more stats for you. We'll start from the bottom up. Rapes, Lafayette, 22. Acadia, 5. Vermilion, 2. Aggravated assault with a firearm. Lafayette, 13. Acadia, 17. Vermilion, 1. Aggravated batteries, 11, 17, and 1. That's Lafayette, Acadia, and Vermilion. Here's one. Armed robberies, 9 here in Lafayette. We're fortunate that none in Acadia and Vermilion as of this date. I'll skip over to the simple burglaries. That's a pretty tough statistic. 149 in Lafayette, 84 in Acadia, and 26 in Vermilion. Folks, people ought to be able to be safe in their homes. They ought to be able to go home in the evenings and not worry about somebody having broken into their house and stolen their guns and possessions. This initiative hopefully will help us solve some of these problems that we are having here in the Acadiana area. The Louisiana Children's Code, Article 305, gives the district attorneys the authority to prosecute juveniles as adults in cases involving violent crimes such as murder or attempted murder, rapes, kidnapping, armed robbery, aggravated burglary, and aggravated battery committed with a firearm. So when the district attorney elects to indict a juvenile for these violent crimes, then exclusive jurisdiction moves to the adult court for prosecution and sentencing, and also for issues related to bail. It is important that the message goes out to the juveniles and their parents to understand that once this election has been made, the juvenile may be ordered to be held in an adult detention facility, such as LPCC here in Lafayette Parish, or the jails in Acadia and Vermilion parishes. I have instructed my felony prosecutors to aggressively prosecute violent juvenile crimes in the 15th Judicial District. We have to deter our juveniles from committing these crimes, and we have to aggressively prosecute them if they choose to commit those violent crimes. We will revisit this next January, and our goal is to see a significant decrease in the number of violent crimes being committed by juveniles in our district. Yesterday, our office presented a number of cases to a grand jury, including 2 cases involving juvenile defendants. Indictments were found in both cases. The first for second-degree murder, attempted second-degree murder, and armed robbery. And in the second case, armed robbery. If you look at the screen, those are now public records. State versus Trevante White. He's now facing 10 to 99 years at hard labor. And State versus Cartel Derussell, he's facing a possible life sentence at hard labor. What does this initiative mean for juveniles and their parents in the 15th Judicial District? 14, 15, 16, and 17-year-old juveniles who commit violent and dangerous felonies will be prosecuted as adults. They will be arrested and held in jail. Their parents will have to either leave them in jail or pay a large amount of money to a bondsman to get them out pending a trial. The juveniles will be prosecuted and sentenced as any adult. As part of this initiative, a very important part, I will tell you, we will ask and reach out to community leaders, ministers, clergy, and educators to ask for their help in preventing this violent crime. We would like not to have to prosecute people, so we will ask them to help us with this initiative. We will reach out to our school board members and principals in all 3 parishes and ask them to allow us to speak to their students, to let them know how serious we are about preventing these violent crimes and the terrible consequences. I will ask Chris Landry, Angie Wagger, who's in Vermilion Parish, and Amy Hebert, our juvenile prosecutors here in the 15th Judicial District, and other speakers in the state, including Joe Prejean, one of the best motivational speakers in this state, to bring the point home, to let the students know that there are consequences, to let them know how much these violent crimes hurt their parents, grandparents, brothers and sisters, and other family members. Most importantly, these speakers will let these students know how much they hurt themselves for the rest of their lives. Remember that, how much they hurt themselves. Let me be very clear. The purpose of this initiative is to deter juveniles from committing these violent crimes and to prosecute them and have them sentenced if they do not get the message today. The purpose of the press conference today is to let everyone know that juvenile violent crime in the 15th Judicial District is going to be aggressively prosecuted. I received a copy of a press release just before we started this conference, and actually a juvenile was arrested yesterday, I believe, for a murder of a Brobridge man in his own driveway. St. Martin Parish Sheriff Beckett Bro said the arrest was made Wednesday evening, January 26. The juvenile now faces a charge of second-degree murder. And I mention that to you just to let you know how serious this crime is. We turn on the television almost every night and we see some issues with juvenile crime. So my message today to juveniles and their parents again: juveniles and guns do not go together. Juveniles and guns are not going to be tolerated in this district. If juveniles carry guns or use them to commit crimes, they are telling us that they want to be treated as adults, and we will do just that. They will be prosecuted as adults, and they can receive the same sentence as adults. In other words, they will no longer be able to commit violent crimes and be able to stay in the juvenile system. If the juveniles want to use guns and commit violent crimes in the 15th Judicial District, like adults, then they will be prosecuted as adults and sentenced as adults. I thank everyone for coming today. We're more than happy to answer a few questions if you have any. I hope you get the message out. I thank you very much for what you're doing. You have a job to do. We all recognize that. And by getting this news out to people, by letting people know that we have a crime problem in the district, will help us tremendously. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
We spoke Friday about Matthew Carter.
Yes, ma'am.
2 years ago. And you confirmed that that case has been resolved.
I can confirm that much for you.
Right. Is that one of the cases that prompted this initiative?
No, ma'am. I can tell you that probably the biggest thing that prompted me to do this is me talking to the parents of a victim. And the parents of a victim who are facing all the heartache, all the issues with that death of their son or daughter. That is what prompted me to really take a hard look at juvenile crime. Because it's heartbreaking. It's terrible to have to face the victim family of a crime such as a murder, and they tell you that, well, you're telling me that maybe this juvenile is only going to get 5 years? I'm not going to see my child for the rest of my life. So that's one of the things that really, really weighed on me to start looking at this initiative. Also, Joe Frazier and I, Jay Prather with the Sheriff's Office, Dusty Gidry, some other people in the office went to one of the high schools, Turlings as a matter of fact. And at that high school, we were well received. And when we spoke to the juveniles and some of the teachers there, we could tell that they recognized that there is a problem. There's a problem in our district. And so after speaking to them and after hearing Joe give a presentation about it, I decided maybe they just don't realize what the consequences are. Maybe they don't realize that they're facing a life sentence. That's pretty serious business. Everybody knows that. And so I'm going to ask Joe, some of our prosecutors, Roya is a great speaker, Fritz, Chris Landry, Amy, I'm going to ask them to join me. And we're going to try to get into these schools. We're going to send letters out to the school board, to the principals, and we're going to ask them to let us come and speak. Just give us an hour once in a while in your cafeteria, in your auditorium. And we want to let the juveniles know that there are serious consequences to what they do. It's not all of what they see on these games they play or on television, that this is serious business. And I think with this group of people, I think we can get that message across to them. And I hope that next January we'll be able to have another press conference and say, it's working. It's working. We've reduced the crime rate.
Do judges not have any say in how they're prosecuted, juveniles?
As a juvenile at age 15, we have the discretion of taking that to a grand jury. And then we indict or don't indict. We present for sure and try to get an indictment for these serious charges. Once that happens, we go to the process. Of course the judges have a say. The judges get the sentence, except if it's a second-degree murder or a first-degree murder, they don't have much discretion there. But other cases they do, like the armed robbery. That's a serious offense, up to 99 years, but the judges do have that discretion.
In juvenile court cases, it's just a judge, not a jury, correct?
14-year-olds, that's correct.
Okay. Under your plan, will that still be the case? It's just going to be...
Under my plan, at age 15, if we bring to the grand jury and we receive an indictment, they're going to be, this case will be presented to a jury.
Okay. I thought you said 14-year-olds.
Well, 14-year-olds are a little different. In those cases, they're still in juvenile court.
Correct.
Chris Landry can help me with that
You
one.
said 14, 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, but it's really
Right.
15, 16, 17.
15, 16, 17.
Well, 14-year-old can be transferred to adult, but it's by motion. And at that point, the judge will have discretion.
Okay, I didn't understand what that means.
So to move a 14-year-old to adult court, you have to file a motion. And then the court has discretion at that point whether or not he can be treated as an adult.
But as a 15-year-old, the discretion comes to us. Yes, sir.
We know that there's already an initiative and a task force to fight crime in Lafayette Parish with the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department. Is this going to be included in that task force, or is this something additional?
Well, as a result of the task force, we'll probably get some cases. And by the way, law enforcement is doing an excellent job. We are very fortunate in Acadia, Vermilion, and Lafayette Parish to have very strong law enforcement. And I encourage them to take these initiatives. And as a result of that initiative, we're going to get some cases. And we're going to work with them, and if we have good cases, we're going to prosecute those cases, juvenile or adult.
Is there a specific area that kind of caught your attention to create this initiative?
No, not really a particular area. I don't know if I even gave that stat, but in the United States of America, I believe there were 13,700 homicides in 2021, an increase of 13% from 2020, and nearly a 37% increase from 2019. Violent crime in Lafayette Parish has increased, since 2018, homicides have more than doubled in Lafayette Parish. In 2021, 32. Going back to 2018, 14. So it's not a particular area that we're concentrating on or that the information came from. It's just information that we receive from all of our parishes, and of course, the national level certainly catches our attention also.
I know you mentioned the shooting that happened in Robridge Man at his doorstep. Just to confirm that I heard it correctly, that that alleged shooter will be charged as an adult?
I have no idea, because that's not my parish.
Okay.
That's St. Martin Parish. I was only trying to make the point that this juvenile crime just continues. Every day we started planning this little press conference a couple of 3 days ago, and just before I started it, Chris, one of my assistant DAs, handed me this press conference. Let's see who did this. Channel 10? I think it's a Channel 10 story. And it says St. Martin Parish, Beckett Bro said the arrest was made Wednesday evening. So, and the previous story was about a Robridge man having been found dead in his driveway. So it's not in our jurisdiction. I only wanted to make the point that that's why we think has to be a serious initiative, and this has to be something that we do.
So if a similar situation happens in Lafayette Parish, in Acadia Parish, in Vermilion Parish, that teenager, if he's 15 and older, will be tried as an adult?
That's correct. We will certainly present it to a grand jury, and if we receive an indictment, then we will prosecute as an adult.
Don, I'd like to bounce off the Matthew Carter question, which is actually a very sad and serious situation involving the 13-year-old and the 14-year-old boy. They were charged with first-degree murder, at least originally, and that happened 2 years ago. Now, you say you can't talk about it, but can you assure the public that those two young men have been held responsible and the family was okay with what happened?
Under the Children's Code, I'm very limited in what I can say. I can just tell you that it has, in fact, been resolved.
With this new approach to prosecuting juveniles, have y'all seen that in any other jurisdiction in the state?
Yeah, I think they're being prosecuted in other jurisdictions. One of the district attorneys that I'm friends with, Tony Clayton, I think that he is prosecuting this way, and I'm sure some of the other jurisdictions are. I didn't use them as a sounding board. I just looked at the stats, and I heard the public outcry about it, and I've talked to so many people that I thought it's something that the 15th JDC needed to do.
Hey, Donna, I want to just circle back here. You say it's been resolved with the Matthew Carter suspects. Was it resolved under these new rules for juveniles, or are you just going to start dealing with juveniles from this day forward?
Well, I think that we probably, I've been in office since January, but I think that we probably prosecuted others before. But in the Matthew Carter case that you're talking about, that we're very limited in what we can say because of the Children's Code, right? And we followed the Children's Code, and we did everything we were supposed to do in the case, and we obtained a resolution.
Okay, then from this point forward, is the information regarding charging juveniles as adults in these violent crimes, will that be public record?
Once the indictment is received from the grand jury and we start that process, some of it will be public record, but as you know, and we hate to tell you that all the time, but it's a case that's under investigation, right? It's being investigated, been presented to a grand jury, and we're getting ready to prosecute that case. So we're limited in what information we're going to give, but once the case is fully resolved, and in a case like that, we'll give you all the information.
And when you're talking about violent crimes, murders, attempted murder, rape, robbery, are you just talking about guns being involved in these crimes, or can it just be across the board, regardless of what type of weapon was used or not used,
right.
But we're just talking about the crime itself?
We're talking about the crimes itself. Could be a knife, could be a bat, could be a pistol, a rifle. If it's a dangerous weapon and it results in a first or second degree murder, if it's an armed robbery that has a weapon, those kinds of crimes that I mentioned earlier, we definitely will prosecute.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So we know that from this point on, 15, 16, 17-year-olds will be tried as adults. But did you guys try anything before coming to this decision to prevent this from happening?
Yes, sir. I think I gave you part of our initiative is to get with the community, the ministers, the clergy, our community leaders, the school boards, the principals. We're going to have programs where we go into the schools, number one. That's only one of the programs. I'm also going to try to find some money so that we can perhaps go to your television stations and put something out on the air about the consequences. I think part of the problem is they just don't realize what the consequences are. And so we're trying to get that out there, and we're going to do everything we can to make the public aware that, number one, there is a problem, and that the solution to the problem is to make sure that these juveniles know what they're really facing. That's part of it. But it's also, we're going to educate them. We're going to educate the juveniles in hopes that we don't get to the point where we have to charge them with anything. Because I think if they realize what crimes they might commit would result in some serious, serious consequences, I think that'll be a great deterrent.
And if we're now going to be trying juveniles as adults, is there going to be enough space in our correctional centers in order to fill those people that are going to be in it? And how much is this going to cost?
It's going to cost the same thing it costs any other case. It's one more defendant. So whatever the cost to try a defendant, now I've never put a pencil to the actual price tag to try anybody, but it's going to be the same. The crime is what we're focused on. We're focused on the murders, the armed robberies, the ag batteries, the burglaries, those kinds of things. Whatever's in the code, 305 of the Children's Code, whatever we can prosecute as adults, we think that the problem has risen to the level that we have to send out a message, and we have to get out there and try to keep our public safe. Acadiana, right now, I don't think they feel safe. And it's not just juveniles. I mean, we're prosecuting everybody. If we get a good report, we get a good case, we're going to try to move it forward. We have to keep our public safe. Acadiana deserves that.
Don, when you and your fellow prosecutors, law enforcement investigators, have dealt with juvenile suspects in the past that have committed these violent crimes, did they know, maybe they knew what the consequences were at the time, knowing that since they were a juvenile, they could get away with just about anything and not get too much punishment, maybe a slap on the wrist? And I guess from what urban legend has it, that record kind of goes away
Mhm.
after they
Mhm.
become an adult. And so they kind of know that, so they can, you know, create what kind of mischief, crimes, what have you, and regardless of who the victims are, and know that nothing's really going to happen to them.
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, I think you make an excellent point. Chris has prosecuted a lot of juveniles here in Lafayette Parish, Amy in Vermilion Parish, and I think maybe a lot of them do think they're just going to get a slap on the wrist. And that's not right. And the legislature has adopted certain legislation and statutes, and now we're going to use that, and we're going to do our very best to put a damper on all of that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Currently, if someone commits murder and they're 16 years old,
Mhm.
and they're convicted in juvenile court before your changes, they get out at 21 automatically? And as he said, the record is clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And that won't,
And that's what
won't
doesn't sit,
happen
that
anymore
doesn't sit
because-
well with the victims' families, you can imagine. They've lost a loved one, their families have been affected, the brothers, the sisters. I get the calls.
now there are some advocates who say teenagers' brains are not developed enough for them to know the difference between right and wrong. Have y'all considered that, and that y'all might get some pushback?
That's part of the system, right? So we present our case to the jury, defense attorney, if he wants to bring evidence of that, maybe that'll help him sway the jury. It's part of the system.
So, if a juvenile is being tried as an adult would probably be convicted of first or second degree murder if he commits that crime. Will we still have the freedom of information if they're being tried as an adult, or would you guys use the child code?
Well,
depending on?
as an adult, you probably know, we don't give a lot of information as long as the case is ongoing. It can be treated the same way, because we really can't do it, we don't want to do it. But when the case is over with, you can file anything you want to file, and we will comply with the public records law. So before, I'm going to try to end this in just a second, but I wanted Joe, if you could just, a couple of minutes, tell us a little bit about your part of the spiel where you talk about consequences.
Well, look, today I'm so happy we have this press conference, and I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out. I want you to definitely understand that this conference is not about locking people up and throwing away the key. The dreams the DA have is the dreams that most families have every day. The mothers and fathers of our community want to see their kid to be part of the community, be more of a prospect than a suspect. We're going to take our time. I'm going to work closely with Don as a motivational speaker. She mentioned something about the young mind is not developed. The young mind need to be developed, but they also need motivation. They need to be taught. Parents need to step up. People in our community need to step up. And that's what it's going to take. I don't want to see anybody locked up. I don't want to see anybody go to jail. I truly feel like as a community, if we can come together and we can motivate the younger generation from the schools, from the streets, get them to believe in something more than just being locked up in jail, we can change the community. And that's why I'm part of the district attorney's office. I teach our own CNA services. We teach a lot of motivation. We teach decision and choices. We teach a lot of programs that can get juveniles involved, where they can truly believe in their dream and not mine. And if we can continue to do that, we have been changing lives for 20 years and want to continue to do that. I work close with the district attorney's office throughout the state, but most of all, I work close with the families. Get them to believe that their kid is more than just going to school, coming home, and hanging on corners. This is not a racial problem, it's a community problem. And together as a community, we can fix it if we take it one step at a time and believe that our kid do have a future.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Ms. Roy, would you like to add anything, Chris?
No, I think you hit it, Mr. Don. I think that it is a collaborative effort among parents, our religious community, our schools, you know, law enforcement. Mr. Prejean has been phenomenal to work with, and that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to make sure that we can stop this at ground zero. And I definitely believe that this initiative will send the message that we need. But while we're in the schools, while we're doing this tour to help these kids, that's how we change the community. It's a collaborative effort, and that's what this office is about.
Can I get you to spell your name? Can you
Joseph Prejean, Joseph-Prejean.
And your title?
I own CNA Service. I'm a motivational speaker, author of a book, and I own a fitness gym also. So I do a little of everything. But I want to leave you with these thoughts too. I truly believe that people always say our community is, man, it's bad, everything's going wrong. But I think we've lost communication with each other. And I think if we work towards communication with each other, we could change each other every day. So we have to work hard on it.
Yep.
And it's hard, people, just to say, I'm at this. Our people in the community, as a guy like me raised up in the community, they don't want to see a guy a lot of times in uniform or with a necktie or in a suit. They want to talk to ordinary people. Our kids understand me because I'm an ordinary guy that done been there. They can relate to me. Sometimes they can't relate to the police department or a guy that's going to prosecute them, but they can relate to a guy that's been to the bottom and working his way to the top. And that's the vision they need to see, people like me changing lives.
Chris, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just have a few things to add, and I've been prosecuting now since 2001 in Acadiana. And when Don said that when a victim's family comes in and there's been a murder, say a 30-year-old man is shot by a 16-year-old and killed, you have to deal with that victim's family, and that is one of the major motivations behind this initiative. And even back in 2005, we could do this with juveniles. It took more steps to get them into the adult side, but I had one in Crowley where a 16-year-old shot up a man in his mid-30s, and just this juvenile had a long record in the juvenile system, even at age 16, and it was time to treat him as an adult. And I think Don has got the consequences have to be communicated to the Acadiana area, and when we get those out there, I think juvenile crime will diminish. But until then, we have to look at the victims, and we have to do something to provide a safe community.
Thank you. Chris?